Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson, and welcome to another session of Construction Business Management. In this module, we're going to be discussing regulatory requirements that you need to consider when starting a construction business or running a construction business. It's quite a large area, especially depending where you're operating. So a lot of these requirements that I'm listing here will be suitable for Ontario, Canada. They would vary by province and they would vary by country. But there's probably similar aspects in most developed countries that you would run into on an ongoing basis. So number one, you have to register a company name. You have to register a corporation. We talked about that in the first session if you're going to be running a business as a corporation. If you're going to be running it as a sole proprietorship or an individual entity, you still have to register the name of the business. And the registration process, and I'll just click on the links here. I put some links on this particular slide so that they should come up. And it discusses, the things that you need to do to register your name. Really, the most important aspect of this is you don't want to start your company, have a catchy name, and then somebody else is saying, well, you can't call yourself that because we've registered this business under that name. And if you've gone fairly far down the stream with your business and you've got a lot of clients, all of a sudden you don't want to change the name of that business. It's also to stop businesses from riding on the coattails of other businesses. If you were to try to name your company and you sort of did McDonald's and then you used golden arches for McDonald's construction or something, you would have some issues with that guaranteed because they would be protecting their brand. So it will really be in your best interest to run a check on that and to check with your lawyer as well if you're setting up a company or a corporation. What's the best way to do that? But I did provide the link here if anybody's interested. Canada Revenue Agency. So in the States it would be the IRS, right? But here we've got CRA. And again, quite an extensive website. A lot of information that can be found on this website. Everything from when we talk, this is actually canada.ca, but the CRA's website would actually provide you with a lot of information on registering your business for an HST number, your registration. That's the harmonized sales tax. Some provinces it might be the GST. Harmonized means it's harmonized with both the provincial government and the federal government. And those requirements, anything that you're thinking of doing with regards to running your business, you want to know, well, what kind of taxes am I going to have owing, and making sure that you're not contradicting those aspects. And as I've written at the bottom of this slide, ensure that you have a really good accountant and a really good lawyer that you utilize for your business. Nobody wants to pay more taxes than necessary. So understanding how taxes are paid, what needs to be collected, if you have employees, what are the collections that I have to, or the amounts that I have to hold back so that I can pay into the government, the required amounts so that I don't end up with a large amount owing and penalties after the fact. We discussed earlier in the course, do I hire this individual or do I hire them as a contractor? A lot of small contractors in construction want to hire people as contractors so they don't have to pay the holdback amounts like Canada Pension Plan, WSIB, and all these other things. But the truth of the matter is, if they're acting like an employee and you're telling them what to do and they're working 8 to 4:30 or 8 to 4 every day, you're really their employer. And there's a whole bunch of information that you can find on that website, the CRA website, that would say, well, is this an employee or is this a contractor? And making sure that you satisfy those requirements. Again, I would definitely discuss it with an accountant that is used to working with construction businesses. Again, general accountants that kind of do regular people's taxes wouldn't be suitable for this. You really want a good accountant that knows and understands this particular industry and the requirements around it, so that you're not caught by surprise with things. That's one of the most uncomfortable things. And also that, quite honestly, that you don't pay more taxes than you're supposed to. What is the best structure for you? Is it a corporation? Is it a sole proprietorship? Depending on your needs, size, scope, and where you're taking it. The Employment Standards Act is another guiding line by the province of Ontario, and it sets the outline of what you as an employer must do and what are the guidelines that you must follow as an employer. So as an example, if I slide down here to vacation, it's not that you decide how long an employee can necessarily have or how much you pay them for a vacation. There's certain minimum amounts that you have to abide by. For example, under the Employment Standards Act, if you hire somebody and they've worked for you for a period of less than 5 years, you have to pay them 4% of their gross wages for vacation pay minimum. You can pay more, but you can't pay less. If they work for you for more than 5 years, then you have to pay them 6%. You have to allocate for 2 weeks if they've worked 5 years or less, 3 weeks if they've worked 5 weeks or more. Of course, it doesn't mean you can't do more than that. It's minimum standard. This is what you, at the least, have to do as an employer. And I think a lot of people starting out running a business don't realize that there are these aspects, and they may not be charging enough for the work that they're doing to provide all of these aspects of payment to their employees. It also has a whole bunch of things about overtime and overtime pay and other areas as well that as an employer you would want to know. So the Employment Standards Act for the province of Ontario sets those guidelines. Also, other Ontario laws include the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Hopefully, if you're starting a construction business, you have a good understanding of the Occupational Health and Safety Act for construction projects specifically. Workplace Safety and Insurance Act, and this is getting into what we call WSIB. We've got the Worker Safety and Insurance Board that provides insurance. You have to pay as an employer insurance for your employees. So if they get injured on the job, there's compensation that's available for them. And there's a lot of rules and regulations around that. And how much you have to pay is based on a percentage of their pay up to a certain maximum. And it also depends on, it's kind of like car insurance, you know, what kind of accident rates you've had on your projects. You have a lot of responsibilities within the Occupational Health and Safety Act and WSIB. So that's another one that you need to consider. Labor Relations Act. Well, Labor Relations Act is essentially for unions. Well, construction industry, maybe you're a commercial construction business and your employees are unionized. And so you may have interactions with the unions that you have to deal with because your employees are unionized. And so what are the areas of latitude and what are the ways that unions approach and negotiate, etc., are all within the Labor Relations Act. Now, of course, when I'm going through these, it's not that you necessarily have to know verbatim what's on every line, because these documents are hundreds and hundreds of pages long, but you should have a good awareness of what's involved and what your responsibilities may be, depending on, you know, are you unionized? If you're not unionized, I don't think that would be one that you would even need to look at. But if you are, that would be one that you would definitely want to look at. Pay equity and human rights code, making sure that you are following governmental regulatory requirements regarding human rights to individuals, pay equity, and ensuring that you meet those requirements, all of those requirements as a business. You might be contravening some of them because you don't even know that they exist. So that's why it's incumbent upon business owners to have a good awareness of that to ensure that they are not contravening things that later on they find out is a big problem for them and their businesses. So these are some of the points that I wanted to bring out as far as regulatory requirements. to be honest, you could spend days on each one of these points. I think as a business, it's definitely a good idea to register a name, to ensure that you're abiding by Revenue Canada agency requirements. That's where hiring a really sound accountant can help you with that, because they will do most of the legwork on that. They'll do practically all the legwork on that if you want to pay them for it, and ensure that you're properly registered, your business has its HST number, you've got that so that you can utilize that. The Employment Standard Act, to make sure that you are paying the right amounts, you're following the right processes there, etc., and what the rules are around that. Health and safety. Well, we've talked about the importance of retaining employees in this course, so you really also should be looking out for their best interest, and you need to know what is the minimum requirements. You can always exceed those requirements, and you can look them up, right? So that's the nice thing. You can have like it on your phone. You can look it up as needed, etc. But definitely making sure that you are paying you're registered with WSIB, Workers Safety and Insurance Board. You have a good understanding of what the cost implications are for each employee, and making sure that this is being added to your overhead. You remember we talked about financial statements earlier on in the course. Well, how do you figure out what your overhead requirements? Well, definitely you're going to have a good understanding of what kind of burdened amounts that you have to place on top of your workers that are working in the field, etc., and ensuring that that's covered and that's priced into your jobs. So that's fine. You have to remit to the government these amounts probably on a quarterly or monthly basis, and if that's the case, then when you're remitting to the government offices, you've held back enough that you don't have some large sum looming over you at the end of the year, along with penalties, etc. So it's a good idea to know these regulatory requirements, dive into them a little bit without getting too carried away. That would be the thing I would say, because they can become daunting looking through these. In many cases, like the Employment Standard Acts, they have like summary sheets that you can look at. They have some videos that you can review that might be a little bit less daunting in that way. And again, talking to the Standards Act, most accountants, they have a good handle on that as well, with regards to holiday pay and vacation pay and Canada Pension Plan holdbacks and all of those various burdened amounts that the employer has to take on. So hopefully that's given you sort of a heads up on the regulatory requirements. Of course, we have all of our other regulatory requirements that I'm not getting into here in construction, building codes, etc. Those are more with the technical side of the construction process, and that's handled in other courses. But from a business management perspective, these are things that you would definitely want to ensure that you've consulted with. Get a really good attorney, get a really good insurance agent as well. So again, with this part here, I've got that down here somewhere. Yeah, there's down the insurance agent, making sure that you protected yourself from lawsuits, and what type of business you're in. Do you have the right insurance? We have, sure, vehicular insurance. Do we have insurance for liability? Do we have insurance for omissions? Do we need insurance for omissions? You know, if you're a designer, you're going to need that. If you're a constructor, maybe not. Depends what you do. So make sure that you've checked into all of those elements. You have a good insurance agent, you have a good accountant, and you have a good lawyer, and that should get you on the right track pretty quickly. So I'm Tom Stevenson, ending this module, and we'll see you in the next module soon. Don't forget to click subscribe below, and if you want to see the other videos in this course, go to my YouTube channel and look for the playlist Construction Business Management, because we start right at the very beginning with mission, vision, goals, and we go out from there. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.